Welcome back, nerds. Fino here. Among this year's crop of summer servants is one Caenis, who shows up as a 4-star rider on Kama's banner, along with Summer Shonagon. Now, Lancer Caenis is a damn good soloist, so let's see if the new model holds up to that standard. Caenis' first skill is a 3-turn party attack buff with crit damage from male and unknown gender teammates, modest magnitudes on both. As you're about to see, Caenis ain't much of a support, so in all likelihood they'll be the only recipient of that second buff, unless you want to have Merlin doing the fighting instead. Next up is a 3-turn art/buster buff with a star dump. Pretty standard stuff, though you'll see the makings of a very crit-centric kit. Rounding out Caenis' skill set is a guts and stars per turn effect, but on near water terrain, it gains extra effects, star absorption and more stars per turn. Each of those star income effects caps out at 10, so you'll get 20 per turn if you get the right terrain. Caenis' noble phantasm is a single target buster attack with 3 preemptive multi-turn effects: NP damage, attack, but only on the water, and crit damage tied to overcharge. On an arts NP, this would be an outstanding arrangement, but having stacking effects on a Buster Noble Phantasm is a bit of a sick joke, considering Caenis has no batteries to exploit. So you're stuck fishing for crits to get subsequent NPs online. You know what the worst part is? For this super crit-centric Buster Servant? 2A, 2B deck. Caenis can't Buster Brave Chain without that Noble Phantasm, which is a real shame for a servant premised on ample stars and crit buffs. This is wishy-washy design, and the best case scenario is that if you wait for the Mighty Chain mechanics change, you can try to run QAB chains instead. Unlike Lancer Caenis, this rider version isn't someone you want to leave exposed on the field, so I'd put better odds on a Koyanskaya setup if you want to build a half-decent team. Maybe you can get a second NP in the 3-turn window if you get lucky, or use a K-Scope, which I would not recommend. But the goal is to use Koyan's cooldown reduction to get your regular skills doubled up, and then ride off your first NP. Generic beatstick behavior, really. What about those water side effects? You obviously can't rely on the terrain to sort itself out every time, which means you either have to suck up the lost effects or change the field yourself. Now, there are 3 servants that can make this happen. Lancer Meltrilus is the most generically good of the options, but running an arts attacker on top of your Buster Rider isn't terribly synergistic. Not to mention Mel's an attacker and doesn't really help Caenis outside of setting the field. Next up is Zhang Jiao, who's a future low-rarity caster that can apply every relevant terrain effect, with a bit of RNG. Beyond that, the catch is that he's a bit of a potato otherwise. The other supportive effects are either single turn or not terribly relevant for Caenis. That and those field buffs are tied to him personally, so you have to keep this millstone protected if you want to get a second round of Caenis' buffs. Last is Talalak, a pretender introduced in Lost Belt 7. She's an attacker but with a slightly more supportive bent than Melt. On top of setting terrain, she has a party buff combo: attack, crit damage, sure hit, and flat damage reduction. Not a bad package, but because you'd be using Caenis against casters, the combo would leave Talalak as a bit of a potato on the field. Pretenders do reduce damage against riders, casters, and assassins. But if we step outside of the water for a second, Caenis has a lot of traits, and these open up some unusual, if impractical, combos. Being an Argonaut opens up compatibility with Jason's charge, star generation, and crit damage buffs. Divinity means Caenis can get Steno's double attack buff, and the Loved One trait opens up a chance to get Summer Brynhild's art/buster buff. That one's not too bad. If you choose to use Caenis with water generators, then you may want to pick up some crit damage codes like Mistress of the Heavens to take advantage of your copious stars and absorption buff. But if you plan to run more conventional setups, consider absorption codes instead. Something like Ms. Majin lets you double dip. This will funnel your damage onto those impactful buster cards. For craft essences, I'm partial to Victor of the Moon for that buster crit combo and that enhanced stat cap to boot. Alternatively, consider a hybrid art/buster CE like Battle Olympia. That particular one also comes with 60% starting charge when you limit break it. This opens up a first turn NP with double Merlin, or even a single Merlin comboed with Caenis' charge append. Overall though, I'm not a fan of this servant. Caenis has 4 notable disadvantages. Firstly, needing water to operate at full power means you either give up some pretty decent buffs, or you're forced to run janky setups with terrain creators. Secondly, the lack of a third buster card undercuts this focus on a buster crit playstyle. You don't have access to the best case scenario for this type of servant. Thirdly, they have an NP that demands to be spammed, but no battery to enable this. And since you're running a Buster Servant, I'd imagine you'd bleed way more damage using Castoria to make easy face card loops, so you just have to roll the dice and hope you get those arts cards at the right time. Maybe even run a third charger. Pretty damn inconvenient. The final disadvantage, and one I didn't mention before, is that we're actually getting a free single target Buster Rider this Halloween, Cinderella Elizabeth. She's got her own flavor of jank, but she's at least a self-sufficient servant that you get at NP 5. Unlike the gacha-bound Caenis. Overall, that makes our favorite angry croissant eater a pretty hard sell. Thanks for watching. Like if you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more, and if you like more off-the-cuff action, I have a second channel, and I just put up my summer Castoria rolls. It was an absolute catastrophe, so if you want to see how that went down, I have a link on screen. See you there.